Some stories hit you in the heart before they even reach your ears, and today's conversation is one of them. My guest's life began in pain, heartache, and a childhood that left him feeling alone, not good enough, and deeply unworthy. To survive, he built walls, thick ones, around his heart. Those walls kept him safe from the chaos and the people his mother brought into his world, but they also kept him from feeling the love and connection that he craved. It wasn't until years later, when he found therapy and then stepped into the work himself, that he began to see just how much of his life was shaped by those walls. Through his own healing, he's turned his mess into his mission, helping others navigate that beautiful, messy complexity of being a human being. His approach is deeply personal and profoundly effective, using somatic work, meditation, and honest self-inquiry to guide his clients back to their natural state of being. And in this episode, we talk about his journey, the lessons he's learned, and the practical tools that can help anyone listening return to themselves. I'm honored to share the story and wisdom of therapist, guide, and psychedelic integration practitioner, my man, Julian Bermudez. Julian Bermudez, my man, am I so excited to be joined here with you today. You know, as I said in the intro, I recently met Julian. I actually had someone reach out about you. And when I looked into all of your bio and everything about you, I was like, wow, this guy is definitely very similar to me in terms of what we love. And our journey seems similar in terms of feeling the higher call at one point, leaving the old life behind, starting anew. So before I get into any of the juicy stuff we're going to get into today, how you doing today, brother?
Fantastic. Thanks for asking. Thanks for having me too, Ryan. Really happy to connect with you.
Absolutely, man. Likewise. You know, for me, playing the role of connector is my favorite thing in the world of playing, getting to meet new people. I don't know if it's this way for everyone, but for me, I just feel like I scratched $1 million scratch ticket or something every time I get to meet someone new. So really excited to have you here with me today.
Yeah, that's a good feeling, isn't it?
Oh, definitely, man. Definitely. And one thing that I'm genuinely curious on, because, you know, on this show, I like to articulate and show people that have lived a life that's a little bit different than most people, or even if they lived a life that is maybe same, but different to most people, how they got onto a path that was really not paved before they started walking it. And so for you, with your background and everything you're into now, how did you find your way into what you're doing now with psychedelic integration work, coaching work, et cetera, and helping people integrate these experiences, helping them reclaim their identity, helping them feel more alive whilst being alive? Was that something you felt connected to early on in life, or did that come out later? And what was kind of that journey like for you?
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's numerous things that have happened that pushed me on this. So feel free to dig into anything, and we can go into any one of them further too. If I were going to sum it down to the big one that really kept me going, was I grew up in an environment that was highly traumatic. Like most people, I was just left with so much pain. I mean, just a little bit of context. My parents were 19 and 20. My dad was 19. My mom was 20. And one-time deal. It was a one-night thing. My mom was working at a strip club and my dad just got a job as a mechanic. And then 9 months later, boom, here I come. So to say that they didn't want me was an understatement. They disliked me. I was a burden, and in many ways they hated me. And so, I mean, that left me with those beliefs of I'm a burden, I'm unworthy, I'm defective, I'm not good enough. Yeah, so I internalized all these beliefs of unworthiness, being unlovable, not deserving of love, and being broken, defective, something's wrong with me. And this left me with tremendous pain, tremendous shame, a lot of anger, and a lot of patterns in how I related to myself and how I expressed my emotions. And these patterns, I realized early in my life, were very destructive. These were the exact same patterns that were given to me. And so I started realizing that these patterns were coming out onto the people that I cared the most about. And when I saw that happening, that's when, I mean, I had this moment where I was looking at myself in the mirror and my face was just transforming into the men that were in my mother's life, which there were a lot of them. And it was just transforming into my father and all these men that were so painfully abusive to me. And I just saw that it was all inside of me too. And I just said, I can't do this. I'm not going to be that person that's going to continue this exact same pattern. I'm not going to hurt people the way that I was hurt. So that was like the big moment right there. And that was a very psychedelic experience in itself, although it just happened naturally for me. And when I got to that point, I just said, I'm not going to keep doing this. I need to make changes. And so once I had the awareness of the patterns that were there and how they were coming out of me, then it was just a practice. It was a continuous practice. It still is, of constantly recognizing, identifying these patterns and cultivating agency, choice to do something new and liberate myself from those patterns. So that's the practice right there. And the more and more that I tried to figure out how to do this, the more teachers I found and the more this path just opened up to me.
Yeah, when the student is ready, the masters will appear. That's exactly what's occurred in my life. And, it's interesting because, excuse me, as you were saying that, I was seeing my own journey of definitely different events, but a very similar yearning to want to heal these things that the people that came before me didn't have the awareness or the resources or whatever it may be to heal them. And one thing I'm curious to ask you, just because this has been a challenge in my life at times, is how do you give yourself grace when you realize there's a new reality you want, but you're not yet there, and there's kind of like a gap in between there. And, the mind is really good at wanting things immediately, right? Like, oh, I see a guy with a six-pack. I want a six-pack. Why don't I have one already, right? So I'm curious for you, like, what is your methodology or your practice for giving yourself grace? Because a lot of people that reach out to me from the show are hearing stories. They're wanting results. They're wanting all these things. But the one thing I see them forgetting a lot is to give themselves grace in the process of healing and becoming the version of themselves that they already believe in their head, but their body hasn't held yet. So what's that process look like for you?
So there's numerous things that you just mentioned, numerous dynamics that are happening here. The first one is a judgment, an evaluation, a criticism. It's, I'm this way and I shouldn't be this way. I should be that way. And there's the unworthiness. There's the belief of I'm not good enough. This is the exact same pattern that I was just talking about, just showing up in a new way. Why I'm trying to meditate right now. Why am I not reaching Buddha nature? It's consistent. So so then the question becomes, okay, so we've recognized I'm being very harsh to myself. Can I forgive myself for being harsh? Of course, because where did I learn this from? Where did this come from? Well, when my body was developing, when my neurological systems, my nervous system, my hormonal system was developing, it was in relationship to people who were very harsh and critical and judgmental to me, and I was never good enough. When my worldview, my perception, my ways of thinking were developing, it was in relationship to that. So of course I'm doing that. I don't know any better. Can I be kind? Can I be gentle to myself when I notice that this is present? Now I've already stepped outside of that pattern and I'm doing something completely different. So then the next part is, well, okay, I see somebody with a six-pack and I want that right away. There's this tendency, and it's so deeply reinforced in our society, to want the immediate fix and change. And like it's like being in the Matrix, for instance. I just plug in this program and boom, I know Kung Fu. We all want it. How do I start to enjoy the step-by-step process of the transformation? For instance, I have a hobby, we might call it, where I grow lots of trees, very specific trees, usually like oaks. So I love to go through oak forests and gather up all the acorns. And I have a really incredible relationship with squirrels. So here it is. And I bring them back and I grow them into trees. And there is a part of me that when I get those acorns, I want the oak forest. I want that forest that I just walked through, but I want it to be mine, the one that I grew and the one that I cultivated and nurtured. So that's there. But when I'm so patient and I'm watching these acorns underneath the dirt and I'm putting my intentions and my hopes and desires and I'm nurturing them so carefully, and I eventually see the first sprouts start to come up, it's, oh my gosh, how beautiful. Here comes the very first sprout of what could be a massive oak forest. And then I see the first leaf and I see this glowing radiance from the very first leaf that you will never see that same first leaf again. This is a one-time experience. And I can be so present with it. And I can be so connected to it. And I can see this glowing is coming from the fruits of all the efforts, all of the intentions that I put into this. And it's glowing with radiance. oh, that's so different from how I was treated when I was growing up. I'm creating something so fantastic and so wonderful. So yes, I want the forest, but there's so much beauty in each one of these first steps. And to be with those, to really connect with that first step and the second step and each stage of this growing and transformation is so beautiful and so precious. And to want to go straight to the very end is to deny ourselves of all of these beautiful steps. We always want to go straight to the end, but if everything was straight to the end, every song that we've ever listened to would just be one note, the last note. And we miss the entire song, the entire composition. So can we slow down and enjoy the song, enjoy the process, enjoy each step building on top of the last one? There's so much beauty here and so much to be experienced and to be enjoyed. So can we allow ourselves, can we forgive ourselves for being harsh, critical, judgmental, and saying, I need to get there right now? Can we be kind and gentle and forgive ourselves for that and then relax into the experience and enjoy it? Those are what we try and cultivate. And of course, that's a practice. That does not come like that. But there it is again. We develop the practice, we nurture and mature it over time, and then we can enjoy it.
Yeah, I love that, man. You know, it's funny. You were the first person besides me that I've ever heard create an analogy from growing plants, because I have a cannabis growing course called Grow with Cannabis. And I have these certain modules that are in each week called the Wisdom and Contemplation Practice. And it's really just something about that stage of growth and what it represents in terms of a human being's life and things like that. And one of the first modules in the seedling stage, I talk about that. I talk about how when a seedling is just coming out, not only is it beautiful, but it's also very delicate, right? It's very, I mean, anything could really screw it up. And so where in our lives are we currently a seedling? And are we treating ourselves as such, or are we treating ourselves like a full-grown sapling? Are we being very rough on ourselves? Are we expecting ourselves to be good at something that we've never done before, right? Like in your story, these were new things you had to learn. And so one of the ego's favorite tricks is to get judgmental or to get frustrated with the lack of progress, right? But really, so long as you're showing up every day and you're creating consistent rituals in which you can move forward towards a goal that you think you want anyway, and maybe that goal changes over time, who knows? But as long as you can keep showing up for yourself and giving yourself grace. And the most important thing, like you said, is remembering to have fun in the journey, remembering that Rome was not built in a day, but eventually it was built. And at the end of the day, if we can allow ourselves to enjoy the actual journey of becoming, then we really win, because there's never really going to be a point where we've become something, right? Like it's always cyclical in nature. You know, the way I think of it too is like, if we come from oneness and we came down here to experience somethingness, then why are we so focused on getting back to oneness, like leaving and going back there, when in reality, we signed up to have an experience of that which we are not? And so again, at the end of the day, if we can enjoy these things and remind ourselves like, hey, we signed up for this in some way, shape, or form. We're not down here by random chance. If you want to believe that, you can. But for me, it doesn't really make me feel that good inside. I think it's just all random chance and probability, like the evolutionists say. But if we can remind ourselves that we're down here to experience all the shades and colors of this human experience, including some of the things that we've categorized as negative emotions or bad stories, right? Like the only bad story, in my opinion, or bad belief system is the one that we don't look at. Because until we look at it, we can't really know through the eyes we have today whether or not that belief system or that story is actually helping or hurting us. And if it is hurting us, what a great opportunity to show ourselves more love. So I love the way you're framing this, man, because it's such a more beautiful way to look at it, at least in my opinion. Again, all you listeners, you can make your own, opinions. But for me, this is the only way I choose to look at life now. If I do have moments, which I do, where I don't, I just remind myself gently, as much as possible, to come back into that frame and to start seeing even the challenges as opportunities in disguise and all of those things. Because, in many areas of my life, I love challenges. So what's the difference when it comes to an emotional challenge or a mind-body challenge or any of those kind of things? So I love the frame you're making, man. It's really cool.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, what you're talking about is, can we be present? Can we be with the experience? And it's in our nature to be present and to be connected and to be attuned to what we're experiencing and to be connected not just to ourselves, but to each other, and to be connected to nature, and of course, to be connected and attuned to what we do. So the things that we create represent who we are. But all four of those we're incredibly disconnected from right now. And where we can attribute this disconnection to is trauma. And so I would define trauma as bad things that happen that shouldn't happen. So you lose a parent, you go through abuse, physical, mental, sexual abuse, you grow up in a war zone, so on and so forth, all the bad things that are happening that shouldn't. But it could also be good things that are supposed to happen that don't happen. So you might have very loving, caring parents who are trying to do the best they can for their child. They're trying to raise this sapling or this seed that's sprouting. And so they're going to the experts to get the advice on how to do it the most optimal way. And the doctors and the experts tell them, well, when your baby cries, don't hold them. Let them learn to cry it out. Let them learn to self-soothe. They got to become independent. So in other words, take all those parental instincts that are inside of you that knows how to care for this baby and suppress it and disconnect from it. And so those are the first parts of the trauma that happen, bad things that happen that shouldn't, good things that are supposed to happen that don't happen. But what happens here is we don't have somebody that's with us attuned to the experience to help us navigate it. So we learn from various ways, just like I did when I was a kid. I learned that if I was going to get angry about not getting the love and the care and the connection and the attachments that I was so deeply dependent on, the phrase was, well, if you're going to be mad, I'll give you something to be mad about. Or if you're going to be sad, I'll give you something to be sad about. Any bit of expression was threatening. So I learned to suppress those emotions. I learned to disconnect from them. And that's the hallmark of trauma right there. Trauma is not just the thing that happens to us. It's what happens inside of us as a result of the thing that happens. And the most common hallmark of trauma is a disconnect, because the pain that we went through, the pain that we were experiencing was so great that we didn't have the tools, the skills, the resources to go through it. So a defense mechanism kicked in, a survival mechanism. It's built into every one of us. And we went away mentally. We couldn't set boundaries. We couldn't make it stop. We couldn't go away physically. So we checked out. And this right here is where we can't be present with anything anymore. And so if we want to learn to be present, if we want to learn to be with the experience and we want to connect to it and be attuned to it, we have to realize, we have to become aware of all the areas where we've become disconnected. And we have to start to see it as an adaptation, a survival mechanism that has helped me in the past. So these beliefs of unworthiness, for instance, I'm not good enough, that's a defense in itself. That helped me in the short term. I could have said, well, my parents, caregivers, these guys suck. They're not up to the job. They're not qualified. In other words, I'm screwed. I'm not safe. And I mean, how could I navigate that as a child? So I come up with well, they do know what's going on. They're older. They got relationships. They got, enough to survive. They're doing okay. The problem is I'm not deserving of it. So if I could be deserving of it, if I could be good enough, if I could do all the things right, then I'll get it. These are adaptations that help us in the short term, but they cause us long-term harm. So if we want to start to be present, we have to start to see all of the areas where we've disconnected and why we've disconnected. What need is this disconnection serving? And then we need to start to make choices. Can we pull that anesthetic out? Can we go to the pain that's underneath this adaptation that's inherent in this experience? And can we make choices on how to relate with it and engage with it and comfort and soothe it? If we can attune to it in that sense, well, now we're coming back into the very experience that you're talking about. And that's very challenging to do. And it's very possible. And it's inside of each and every one of us, the ability to do it. In fact, it's our nature to come back to it.
100%. Yeah, we're all looking to come back to our true nature, which is wholeness, right? So at the end of the day, those parts of us that have been dissociated, that have been cast off, exiled, etc., they're yearning to come back. And I think one of the challenges that I see in a lot of people too is the feeling that these things must be bad, right? IFS would say bad parts, right? They don't exist, but this is how they would frame it. And I think that is also part of the challenge when it comes to healing these things, is that a lot of people that maybe don't have the full awareness like you're talking about here, they get into it and they get like almost annoyed or frustrated with these parts. And in a way, the way that I think of them is just like they were when they were a child, right? The way that you looked at your parents and said, okay, well, you know what? And it's not like you probably consciously thought this, but just like you were just saying, it's like, okay, I either believe one of two things. Either I'm royally screwed at the caretakers I have, or as a defense mechanism to once again stay small, but also frame in my mind that the caregivers I have are not doing what I actually deep down know they're doing, which is not right, doesn't feel good, it's not coming from love. But if I choose to believe that I'm just not good enough and I get to play small and these things, that will help me during that time. And then as we get older, and maybe we don't need those specific beliefs anymore, but yet that doesn't make them go away. And then we start learning about these things and people get frustrated, right? Like, oh, why isn't this part of me? Or maybe not even the awareness of that it's a part, right? But they get angry with these parts. And what I found is just like you're saying, giving them compassion, showing them love, which is why working with a therapist like yourself is so powerful because that isn't exactly easy to do. It can be simple, right? We can talk about it from a very simple standpoint, but simple and easy are very different things. And I think that that's part of the challenge of, the modern day world with all this awareness on trauma. A lot of people are trying to figure it out themselves. And while I'm not going to say that's impossible, I will say it's very challenging and it's very easy to get stuck in a loop where essentially you just get more and more disconnected from yourself over time. Have you seen that happening? I'm curious if it's just my purview I've been seeing, but I'm just curious, speaking from your experience, if you've been seeing that as well when it comes to trauma and people trying to handle it on their own, trying to attack it with the same mentality they go into the gym to work out with, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're describing the nature of being very harsh to yourself. I get very angry with this part of myself, which is to say, I get very angry with myself. I exile. I send this part of me to a timeout and I say, you go into the corner until you can learn to regulate yourself and be more acceptable in terms of how I want you to be. So there's conditions, expectations, evaluations, punishments, criticisms. And where did I learn that from? Yeah. Exactly. So we go right back to, this is the pattern. This is the pattern that I was talking about earlier. Okay, can I choose to do something new? Well, when this pattern has been flowing since the beginning of your life and it's deeply entrenched, it's like a river that's been flowing since the beginning of time. The water flows so fast, so easily through that. It's going to continue to get activated. Identifying a new pattern outside of that and choosing it is like starting to see a color that you're blind to. It's like trying to put together a puzzle, a 10,000 piece puzzle, but you can only look 2 inches above the puzzle. You can't see anything that's happening there. And it's very challenging to do. So in terms of trying to do it yourself and figure it out, well, yeah, that's what I did. I've been on my own since I was an early teenager. You don't exactly accumulate resources and wealth and finances when you're living on your own as a teenager. In fact, you're so deep in the hole always that the idea of spending money on a therapist or spending money on a teacher or a guide or a coach or somebody who can help you through it is pretty far-fetched. And so I have this defense mechanism to that pain of being isolated, which is I need to be strong, independent, and do everything on my own. Here we are. So then I go round and round and round. I keep trying to create new patterns outside of the old one, but it's like playing guitar. And I know 3 chords, open chords, and 1 strumming pattern. Every song sounds exactly the same, no matter how many times I rearrange it, because I'm only using the exact same variables over and over and over again. So it's very important to recognize that pattern of I'm stuck here and I believe that I have to do this on my own. And the benefits that people get, I work with somebody, this is so common, unfortunately, and they'll say, I've been in therapy for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, much more. I've worked with some people who are, in the last chapters of their life, and they've been in seeking help their whole lives. And I've talked to a lot of people who haven't sought help. I might be one of the first ones that they've done. But very commonly, what they both say is, wow, we got to things in the first 5 minutes that no other therapist or no other insight that have ever gotten to. So finding a good coach, a good teacher, a good therapist, somebody to be there with you who can help you see the patterns, because this mind, this adaptation to those patterns, this defense mechanism, it's going to justify them and it's going to rationalize them and it's going to try and convince you that they're there for a reason and that they should be there, or that this is a good thing. Or even when you create a new one and it's the exact same pattern, it's like the old Scooby-Doo, where the person would hire the gang to come and solve the case, and it was that person that was always the villain. So at the end, they do the unmasking. Oh, it's Old Man Withers. Yeah, it's the exact same pattern over and over and over, creating itself over again. So having somebody there to go through it with you, we're not meant to heal in isolation. And in fact, the isolation or the interpersonal relationships caused the pain that we're carrying to begin with. So we can't heal in isolation. And it's seductive. You can go onto ChatGPT and you can start to use ChatGPT to help you with all this. And they'll say all the buzzwords and all the things you want to hear. It's almost like they're programmed to manipulate us emotionally. And like they've gathered every bit of information on us and know exactly how to twist and pull every little thread that we want to hear. But does that really help? Does that lead to transformation? Does that liberate us? Do we have agency and choice in that? Maybe it's useful for you. But if you're stuck in it, in that pattern, it's no bad thing to reach out and ask for help. And something I wish I would have realized when I was younger is not to let something as silly, as petty, as trivial, as, even though it's very, very important to you at lots of points, something as petty as finances stop you from asking for help, because there are a lot of people out there who are willing to provide you with some amount of support, some amount of resources to help you along your way. And that might be just a doorway that opens up to something else. That's certainly what happened with me.
Beautiful, man. Beautiful. And I mean, I'm curious too, to figure out, like, after you started to have awareness around the fact that you had these things and that you had developed these patterns, these belief systems, these stories, etc., how did you find your way, maybe not out of it, I don't know if that's the right language, but how did you get your head back above water? Like if someone's listening to this and they're really resonating right now and they're saying, oh, darn, like Julian, I feel just like you. I have next to no money. Maybe there's even a teenager listening to this in a very similar situation. Again, what are some things that you could invite them to consider anyway, that would allow them to start to potentially get their head above water? And I'm using soft talk on purpose because I don't want anyone to ever think like this is the one solution. Like I'm so sick of that kind of marketing talk. But, at the same time, like what are some of the things that you for yourself found really supported you until you could find someone that could be that support system for you? And if you want to get into how you first found out about things like therapy, coaching, et cetera, and you want to tail end into that, that'd be perfect too.
Sure. I think what we're talking about here is, how do I make myself a priority? So if you have any of those beliefs of unworthiness, which I've never met somebody who doesn't have them, they show up in all sorts of interesting ways. And it might be, I'm a workaholic and I spend all the time accumulating wealth, status, power, respect. Or it might be, I'm blocked off from any of these things because I'm not deserving of them, which I could certainly relate with that one. How do I make myself a priority? So when I'm sitting here and I start to feel some discomfort in my body, maybe it's a fear, maybe it's an anger, maybe it's a pain. And it's not about anything that's happening here. I'm just sitting and then, here's something. It's residual. It's pain from the past and it shows up in the present. What do I do with that? Well, for me, I know personally, as soon as I feel that thing, it's like there's this little claw machine thing that has legs and next thing I know, I'm looking at something that isn't important and it's distracting me. So can I recognize that? Can I recognize that I use my phone and scrolling and watching stupid videos on YouTube to justify the anger, to justify the fear and the pain that I'm in? or to distract me from it. Now, can I make a choice to make myself a priority? Now, this is where we start to get into the practice of, well, what do I do with this? How do I navigate this? If you're not at a place where you can reach out and ask for support, well, there's great teachers and resources. You can watch countless videos of Gabor Mate talking about all of these things and working with people individually on there. You can read IFS books like You Are the One You've Been Waiting For, or you can, or No Bad Parts, or you can listen to the audiobook where there's excellent meditation practices. These are all things that I've done. You can start sending out emails to people and ask them like, hey, this is my situation. You got any advice? I reached out to Rick Strassman, the guy who did DMT, the spirit molecule, and did all those early studies. And he opened up doors to me that I didn't know existed just from a couple basic emails. So there's a lot of people out there who are involved in this. And if they really care about the craft that they're developing, they'll provide some pointers. In terms of when I got into therapy, it was when I was trying to figure out some answers to all of these dynamics. I actually made it to the university, and I was in university studying addiction psychology. I'd gone to community college for 2.5 years, and then I transferred to a university. Which was incredible for me, by the way, because I was borderline illiterate when I first started going to community college. Of course, I've been living on the streets since I was 13 years old. What do you expect? So it was incredibly challenging. And I finally got to university, and they give you healthcare. Well, they don't give you healthcare. They charge you for healthcare, but you get it through the university. And so they had some therapy that was available there. And so I start seeing this therapist. And I remember one of our last sessions, which we probably only worked together for maybe 6 weeks. She just wasn't capable. She wasn't qualified. She cared. She really wanted to do good, but she just didn't have the skills or tools to do so. And I'm telling her about these experiences that I have, where I'm sitting in my apartment with my 2 dogs, and I have this incredible fear and anxiety that somebody's going to come and kick in the door, and it's going to be like an authoritative figure, like, the feds or some police or something like that. And they're going to come and grab me and beat me up and then haul me off to jail. And my dogs are going to get impounded and so on and so forth. And all these terrible things are going to happen. And what she asks me is, do you smoke cannabis? She didn't call it cannabis, of course.
Said marijuana.
Yeah. Which I just... Anyway, and I said, well, yeah, of course, you know what it's like to feel these types of big emotions all the time? And she says, well, you're just paranoid and delusional. That's a side effect of smoking cannabis, and you need to give that up. And in fact, we got a psychiatrist in house. She's going to get you on some medications, and we're going to clean this up right away. And I said, no. And she said, well, if you're not going to get on the medications and get off of the cannabis, then I can't work with you anymore. And so we stopped working together. Well, if she would have just asked me some very fundamental questions like I would ask people, which is, was there ever a time in your life where people busted through your boundaries, even though you didn't want them to, and harmed you or took you away? Or was there ever an authoritative system or person or anything that came after you and harmed you, even though you didn't want them to? And I would have said, well, yeah, that's the story of my life. Do you know what kind of men my mom brought into her life? Jeez. Yeah. I mean, every day. And it was, oh, okay. So this isn't paranoid delusions. This is pain from the past showing up here in the present. Now we can start to work with it. Now we can actually engage with it. So just going and seeing a therapist, unfortunately, isn't always a helpful resource. So what I really encourage people, if you're listening and you're thinking, how can I get some support, is, well, one question I always ask people is, have you ever had a gut intuition that said you should or shouldn't do something, and then you didn't listen to it, and it later on turned out you should have listened to it? So when you start reaching out for help, when you start looking for teachers or therapists, trust yourself, because there are a lot of people out there who mean well and just don't have the skills or the resources or the training to help you. And then there's a lot of people who don't mean well, who will present themselves as the very thing that you're looking for. And they're very good at shape shifting, and they will look so clean and so sparkly, and it'll be so seductive. And they do not have your best intentions at heart. The way that you can navigate this is to reconnect with that intuition that's inside of you. Again, now we're doing the practice. So start to trust yourself, start to turn your attention inward. Look at the distractions, look at all the patterns that are taking you away from where you're disconnected at. Try and be present with yourself, start to reconnect with yourself, and have people help you. You don't have to do it alone.
Yeah, dude, I love that, man. And, it's funny because I also went to school to become a therapist. And part of the reason why I decided to go a different route, it's a lot of multifacets, of course. But one of the main reasons was when I was 16, I started experiencing symptoms that I would now designate as generalized anxiety disorder. And I think that most 16-year-olds go through some form of this. It's like, hey, hope you've enjoyed being a kid. You better know what you want to do for the rest of your life in 2 years, right? It's like, that's an anxiety-provoking time. And so I remember that at this point in my life, I was very trained to think of the girl or the guy in the white lab coat as knowing more about my health, my well-being, my best interests than I did. Yeah. And so I go to this doctor, and after about literally 4 to 5 minutes, he tells me I have anxiety, not that I was experiencing sensations that could be called anxiety, but that I had it. And because I had it, there was a whole laundry list of medications that he could put me on. And so very similar to you, what happened was I got put on the first medication because I didn't know better at that time. And I went on to it. And every single one I went on, because I went on about 8 over the next 2 years or so. Every single one of them would just make me feel less connected to myself, is how I would state it in words of today. And I remember thinking, is this the way the rest of my life's going to look? And so when I got into school for therapy and psychology, I was really excited to really become, in my opinion, the best psychologist I possibly could. And what immediately frustrated me was the fact that once I did the same thing as you, I went to community college, then transferred to a university. And the first 2 years that I was at community college, it was all about being able to get general education, right? General eds, gen eds. And I thought it was kind of weird because I was like, I just did all this at high school. Why am I doing this again now? And then once I start going to university, they wanted to put me in all these electives again. And I'm like, at what point do I start becoming the world's best psychologist and not just some amalgamation of all these different things put together? And that's where I started seeing through the structures that make up the general education system. And around that same time, I ended up going to school for cannabis. And through a series of very fortunate events, found my first coach, this guy, Mark England. And very similar to you, I wasn't looking for a coach. I didn't think I needed one. It wasn't really on my radar. I was really good at distracting myself back in those days. But when I connected with him, it was funny. I had heard him on a podcast about 3 years prior. And I remember when my girlfriend and I both listened to that episode, we both felt like a really strong fuck yes from our heart. And it was just really cool what he was talking about, his very simplistic system of words or spells, and these stories that you tell yourself create the narratives and the reality that you experience. And so years later, I'm going through what I would now call a Kundalini awakening, and I'm pouring my heart out on Facebook because I didn't even have Instagram back then. And I make a post about perspective and how language can shift perspective. And I'm just talking, and someone comments and says, hey, that stuff about language is really cool. Where'd you learn that? So I'm like, what was that guy's name? And so I tag Mark England in the comments, never talked to him before. And about an hour later, I get a voice note from him, my first voice note ever. So I always say to anyone out there who gets voice notes from me, you can either love or hate Mark for this. But I end up getting my first voice note, and Mark's like, hey, we should hop on a call. I'm like, awesome. So I hop on a call with him. We start talking, and I forget exactly how the conversation went, but he's like, hey, man, this program I run, I think would be really cool for you. And again, I didn't have this on my radar. Again, I had been interested in psychology for more than half my life, but I had just completely written that stuff off and got into the cannabis industry. But something in me just said yes. It wanted to say yes. And so I just said yes. And I get into this program, and it literally changed my life. And now Mark and all of these people that were once my coaches are now some of my best friends, and we all work together and everything. But, that intuitive hit that you're talking about is very, very real. I was working with a client recently, and we were going through, he's gone through some bad breakups and things like that. And he's met a new person in his life. And, he's really excited, but he's also not really sure if he's feeling the fuck yes. And he's asking me hey, what should I do? And I'm like, listen, man, I'm never going to tell you what to do, because if I did, first of all, I don't know what you should do. I don't have answers for you. That's not what I do here. Second of all, I'd be robbing you of your power. I'd be giving you a fish instead of teaching you how to fish. So I asked him, I said, what does your heart say? Because I think your heart already knows the answer, and I think you already know it. And so he realized, okay, you know what? This is not my person. And that's okay. That doesn't make him a bad person. Again, at the end of the day, these intuitive hits, just like you said, you'll know when something's right for you, and you'll know when something's wrong for you subjectively. And if you decide to do something different, okay, great spirits down for whatever. But at the end of the day, you will have some kind of maybe a negative reinforcement. I don't like to put the word negative in there, but a negative reinforcement, something that maybe scolds you a little bit in some way, shape, or form, physically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually, to show you hey, when that feeling comes up, you might want to go this way next time. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, because it's something that everyone has access to. For everyone listening, you don't need any certain amount of money. You don't need to be born with a silver spoon in your mouth. Everyone can practice connecting with themselves and to their intuition. So I really like that as a universal system too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, emotions are signals from our body helping us to navigate the environment. Unfortunately, we all learn to disconnect from our emotions very early in life. So yes, reconnecting with them, it can be painful. It can feel very threatening. It can be dangerous, and it can be really intense in the short term. And as you see here, as you're mentioning, it provides guidance. Okay, that wasn't the right turn. Let's go this way over here. It provides you with some sort of direction. So there's long-term relief here. Yeah, in our society, unfortunately, so many of the authoritative structures out there, they don't have our best interests at heart. We go to the university and we study psychology, and the doctors go there and they study medicine. Brought to you by Pfizer, right? 75% of Americans are on at least one medication. Depending on what stats you look at, over 50% of children are on at least one medication. I've worked in hospitals. My partner is a nurse triage for pediatrics. And, the amount of children that are on a conglomerate cocktail of medications these days. I mean, as young as 2 years old, they're on antipsychotics, antidepressants, anti-anxieties, you name it. Each one of these is disconnecting us further and further. Yeah. And unfortunately, there are so many systems, structures, people out there who will tell you, this is the path. This is how you will feel good. This is how you'll enjoy. This is how you'll thrive in life. It's not to say that medications can't be useful. When used in the right context and with the right support for the right amount of time, they can be very useful. So if we're very unstable, our emotions, our pain is so great, we can't be present at all, and we're, a threat to ourselves or to others, medications can be very useful. Yes. And we have to go into that space and start to build the skills and the tools to work with that pain that's underneath it, to relate with it, to attune and connect to it, and soothe, express it in constructive ways and nurture this pain. That way, the medications aren't necessary. But unfortunately, as we both experienced, when you go in for help, the first line of treatment and the last line of treatment is, here's this prescription, take these medications. Each one of these things is trying to take you further and further away from yourself. There's multi-trillion-dollar sectors of the economy that are based on selling you things that will disconnect from yourself, or making you feel even worse, selling you the belief that you're not good enough. So buy this product and then people will like you. So yeah, we really need to, the process, the practice here, the calling of our age is to reconnect to ourselves and to address these intergenerational patterns of disconnection that have been handed to us, and to begin to reattune to ourselves and to others. It's no secret to say, or a surprise to say, I think a lot of people would say this, that our survival very much depends on it, because things are getting very intense right now. And I mean, we see it all over the world. One of my teachers says that unprocessed trauma is destiny, meaning that the same pattern will keep coming back and back around giving us a new opportunity to engage with it. And Terence McKenna talks about the complexity of life. He describes it as this spiral where everything, the same experiences keep coming back around, but they get more and more intense. And that's what's happening right now, is we're seeing the exact same things come around, getting more and more intense, pricking us in the side, constantly saying, hey, I'm here. You need to reconnect with me. You need to pay attention to me. And if you don't, I'm going to make you suffer. I'm going to make you miserable. A. Jalmas has a wonderful quote where he's talking about this, and he says, this part of you loves you so much it's going to make you suffer until you can face it. Because, well, what else can it do? That's its purpose. This part of you loves you so much, that's the only thing that it can do, is to lead you back to yourself. So if there's suffering in your life, if you're experiencing hardship, these are signs to reconnect with what you're going through. And, again, you're not going to do it overnight. Try to be gentle, try to be compassionate to yourself. And, you don't have to do it alone. There's lots of people who want to help you.
Yeah, man, I love that. And, I agree with the same sentiment that pain is the best teacher. It demands attention, doesn't ask for it, it demands it. And I think also in our society, to talk about the same challenge from a different angle, what have we learned about pain? Oh, Julian, you don't have pain. You just have an Advil deficiency, brother. Don't worry. Just take this pill and you'll be fine, right? And I think the information is fractionalized. Like whether or not, I imagine there's someone at the top of this thing who sees the entire spread. But the doctor, right, went to med school, did their thing, thinks they're being of service for the most part. Again, there are some nefarious characters out there. But a doctor doesn't also specialize in big ag, for instance, and understand what's going into the food supply. The food people don't know what's going on in the mental health realm. But, it's very interesting. I don't know if you've seen that chart. I don't even know what to call it, but it's like the connection of all things is what I'd call it. And it talks about how the Rockefellers and all these people kind of spread out and created this whole thing over time. And in the sovereignty space, it's very similar, right? Like when you start learning about how debt is fraud and all this stuff, it gives you a little bit of an ego to want to go to a bank and be like, I know what you guys are doing, thinking that the teller there knows what's going on. Like they have no idea. Even the bank manager, hell, even the CEO has no idea what's happening. There's one person in that whole organization that kind of knows, which is the indentured trustee. But again, it's the same way everywhere, because how we do anything is how we do everything. And I totally agree with you that we kind of have this perfect storm brewing where, people are becoming more and more aware of all the stuff that isn't them, that they don't want, etc. So we have that happening at the same time that some other people are completely losing more and more awareness because of the phones and everything else. And not really even because of the phones. It's because they were never trained to handle emotion and they're utilizing the phone or whatever it is, the coping strategy, in place of knowing what the hell else to do with it. And then if they try to figure something else out or get some help, they get put on the medication. They trust the guy or girl in the white lab coat. Like, it's very interesting what's happening at the same time that we're having all this nefarious shit happen in the world. It's a very weird time. And what I do my best at to remind people is like, hey, if you choose to believe that we came down here in a soul family and all this stuff that spiritual texts talk about, and I choose to believe that simply because it makes my life more grandiose and more fun to be in, so I choose to believe that, then we had to have signed up for this. And so at that point, you got to remember who the hell you really are and what version, what empowered person or what empowered soul would choose to play the game on expert. And regardless of who you are listening to this or whatever right now, you're playing the game on expert. Okay. We are living in some interesting times where, yes, challenging things have happened before, wars, all these things. But back in those days, if you weren't directly in the vicinity of the battle, you might not even know it even happened. But these days, you can turn on your TV and see a lot of stuff that really most people have no power to change in terms of like going over there, picking up a gun, fighting in the war. But yet they're smothering themselves with that fear, with that anxiety. When in reality, I always ask people, like, what can you do? Like, who can you be and what can you do? What you can do is you can heal yourself and work on prioritizing yourself like we talked about before. And by doing that, you end up becoming a lighthouse. You are the reminder. You are the pattern interrupt or the red pill, if you want to talk in matrix terms, to other people. It makes them question, because if people are walking around, let's say, just as an example, if people are walking around like, yeah, man, everyone's depressed today, I don't know what to do about it. And then they meet you and you're not, that's going to stick in their brain and be like, well, I don't know what happened there. And it's going to give them an opportunity anyway to look at their thinking. and learn to think about their thinking. They could easily just be like, oh, well, that guy must have been on drugs or something, whatever, and write it off. But like you said, these things come back in cycles to hopefully heal us. And at the end of the day, another analogy that I love from Part's work is the idea of just being a parent, right? Like imagine you're a parent, maybe some of you guys listening are, and you got 3 kids and one's really happy with you, one's kind of silent, and one's screaming and crying. What do you do at that point, right? Like if you're wanting to be a really conscious parent and you're looking to be loving, do you lock that kid away in a closet and come back when he's done crying? Hopefully not, right? You take attentive care. You hold space for that child to work through his or her emotions in a safe, respectable manner. And once they're done with that, they're back to, okay, I feel my natural state of joy again. And that's why I loved, in your bio talking about coming back to what we've always been. We're not talking about adding more shit in here. We're talking about subtracting, getting free of all the nonsense that we ever thought was us underneath the beautiful innocence that always has been waiting for us, underneath all that essentially clutter on the dining room table that we've thought was us over time. So I really appreciate your viewpoint on that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot going on. So, oftentimes I feel like, it's a zombie apocalypse. And so many people are just so disconnected right now that they're just a shell of who they were. And it's like, we're in the realm of hungry ghosts. Everybody's just walking around like zombies, just looking for the next thing to give them a little fix. And it's terrifying. Mm-hmm. And I feel very scared about that and a lot of pain about it. And in some senses, it's even hopeless because things are getting much more intense in that sense. I mean, in the last 5 years, the amount of, if you want to call it zombie, the being very disconnected from yourself. And then you got all these crazy drugs that are coming around too. Like it's intense. Like I live here in Portland and I can't walk down the street without coming into interaction with somebody, and they might be wearing really nice clothes, driving a nice car, have a whole family, and they're so disconnected. And it's terrifying. No, how do we start to come back? On the other hand, I see lots of people, lots of communities that are forming, that are pulling the other way, that are really starting to help people reconnect to themselves. We got to make choices. That's what it really comes down to. Which one of those, which way do you want to go? And then it's up to each one of us to make those decisions. And it's difficult because we might build our whole life on these adaptations of being important, being respected, accumulating resources, being right. Because if I'm right, then I'm powerful and then I can't be hurt. Whatever it is, really starting to look at those things. You were talking about doctors, therapists, not bankers, not knowing, how the system works. Henry Ford quote where he says, if more people understood what money was, there'd be a revolution overnight. I know so many doctors, so many, and they think what they're doing is right. And they just have no idea what they're really going around the world spreading. And they're good friends of mine. And it's so hard to have interactions with them because they want me to validate them and acknowledge what they're doing. And anytime I start to question, introduce questions, it introduces a lot of pain. And then they resent me for it. So it's this weird dynamic of, a lot of people really believing in what they're doing. And, I was talking to somebody recently and she couldn't say a sentence without bringing it back to how she hates Donald Trump. Everything, Trump this, Trump that, Trump this, Trump that. Now, whether you agree with the guy or don't, right? Something more is going on here. And, I don't know what it was, but something about our interaction. I didn't say anything about it because I wasn't going to volunteer that this wasn't a therapy session. And she goes, actually, you know what? I'm sorry. I keep bringing this up. I keep going to this. Donald Trump just really reminds me of the guy who raised me and I hate him. She did all the work right there, just from a little conversation. So yeah, these are ways that we can really start to reclaim some autonomy, some agency, is to really start to look at the patterns in our lives and where they come from and what purpose they serve. And it's not always easy, and it's super essential.
Yeah, 100%, man. And I jokingly, I literally mentioned this book on every podcast. So sorry, guys, here it comes again. But I really enjoy A Course in Miracles and the book The Disappearance of the Universe, because for me, it was the most simplistic system I've ever seen to understand what's really happening. And again, like different spiritual texts talk about this from different angles. The Tao talks about it. Buddhism talks about it. Pretty much any Eastern religion mentions a similar type of idea. I think in Buddhism, or maybe it's in Taoism, they call it the illusion, the great illusion. But A Course in Miracles calls it the dream. And so really, we're the son of God or child of God. It's gender neutral, dreaming a dream in which we are separate from God. And so our ego, to make this very convincing, has cast an illusion or dream in which there's 8 billion separate selves. But really, our perspective on what we're seeing in the world is based on our own projections of unconscious guilt from our separation from self or God, however you want to look at it, creator, source, whatever, projected into the world. And so, I've had to reckon in this myself with regards to politics in the past, which is why I've never tried to get too involved in it, because it's just a thirst trap, making people think they have an idea of what's really going on, making them think they have a choice, when in reality, if you look into that enough, it's just a thirst trap to nowhere. But at the end of the day, if I'm saying I don't like that person out there, really what I'm saying is I don't like myself, a certain edge or a certain air or a certain perspective or a certain belief system or whatever in myself. And the more that I can bring that back to me and say, what does that person mean about me? And can I thank them and be grateful for them showing me something about myself where I was not in union with myself, where I was not connected with myself, and where I didn't have compassion for myself. And this isn't having no boundaries, right? There's a very distinct line here. If someone comes up to me and say, kicks me, I don't have to hold them with hate in my heart to create a boundary of you're never going to do that again, right? And so at the end of the day, this isn't about, overwhelming your own tendencies in life or your own preferences or anything like that. It's more about realizing like what I'm seeing out there is a reflection of what's in here. And so if I'm seeing a world out there that is Donald Trump this and Donald Trump that or whatever, it's like, just like your friend said, right? She got it. It's like, hey, you know what? It actually has nothing to do with him. He just represents someone in my life. And, man, like what a beautiful world. If everyone could wake up tomorrow understanding the law of correspondence from Hermetic principles, I dream about a world where we woke up and just embodied that second principle of as within, so without. So that when we went to go bark at someone, we were like, oh, shit, what does that mean about me? Right. And so at the end of the day, I really think one of the biggest things we're here for is discernment, especially today. I think throughout all of time, discernment has been powerful. But I think right now, the deception has never been higher, or the potential to be deceptive has never been higher. We saw it with COVID, right? Pandemic, all that kind of silly stuff. And again, for anyone that didn't see it, I have complete compassion for you. It's okay. I probably had many lifetimes where I didn't see this shit. But, at the end of the day, like we are being gifted the opportunity to wake up in a rapid amount of time. But when people wake up, they also become more aware than ever of all the stuff happening that isn't coming from somewhere loving. And that is a very challenging time to be in. And I can feel that happening in society right now. And it's a very weird time to be alive. I'll definitely say that for sure.
Very interesting time, to say the least.
Yeah.
I think about that quite a bit. Difficult, a very challenging time. And, here we are. You're going to answer the call. Mm-hmm. You're going to engage with it.
It's the only option.
Yeah. Are you gonna open the door and say, it's time to do this? I'm going to take some responsibility and accountability. Or are we always going to be a victim? Is it always going to be somebody else's fault? Is it always Donald Trump's fault or Joe Biden's fault or Kamala's fault or whoever it is? They're the reason why. If you're a victim, then you're just waiting to be saved. And just like I said earlier, I was talking about that book, the title of it. I'm not necessarily recommending the book. Of course, you can read it, but the title of it is very important. It's an IFS too, and it's You're the One You've Been Waiting For. Nobody's coming to save you. It's not the aliens. It's not the gods. It's not the entities, whoever. It's you. And what's interesting is when you really connect with yourself, you find out that, that's who you are. It was you the whole time.
Yeah, man. One of my favorite quotes of all time is, What you are seeking is also seeking
Sure.
you. Because it really perfectly puts a bow tie on this conversation and everything we've been talking about. And, Julian, this has been amazing, man. I can't believe we already rocked an hour, dude. This has been so fun. I can't wait to get you back on. I'd love to dive into a lot of other parts of your story. I know there were some things we didn't get to, but that just gives us so much more beautifulness for the next time. So, man, I really want to thank you, first of all, for coming on the show. And I want to make sure people know where they can find you, where they can connect with you. I'll make sure to put it all in the show notes. But where can people go to connect with you, learn more about you, potentially work with you? Where can I send them in?
Come to my website, please, psychedelic-integration.net. We are rolling out a lot of new things coming up. We're doing weekly groups that are free, so anybody can log in. We're doing one called Psychedelic Therapy Live. It's on the third Friday of every month. You can just watch if you want, or you can hop on, ask questions, come and have a conversation, talk about what you're working through. Use it as a great resource. It's free. Anybody can hop in. You can see that on my website. And then there's 2 other support groups that we have as well. An introduction to psychedelic therapy, where you can come in again, talk. It won't be streamed live, so it's a lot more private. And then we have a microdosing coaching group as well, for people who are doing this and are looking for some support. And it'll be a place where people can come and talk. And again, ask questions, bring what you're going through, come to the table with something. Free groups, guys, come check it out. And, I do free consultations as well, 30 minutes. So if you want some support, there's no charge for that. And when we start working together, the first session, hour and a half session, it's always free if you decide it's not for you. So for any reason, if you just say, this isn't what I was looking for, I don't charge. So lots of low barrier ways to get started or to get some support and go further in whatever it is that you're working through. And of course, we got things like Instagram too, where I post lots of videos of us talking about this kind of stuff. So check us out, follow us, and please feel free to use us as a resource. You don't have to go through it alone, and we're here to help.
Julian, that's so amazing, man. It's really amazing to see incredible people like yourself and your partner and your dog too. I loved the pictures of your dog on there, but it's really amazing to see you guys really going out there and putting your money where your mouth is and saying, hey, you know what? If you're someone listening right now who maybe feels like I did when I was 16, 17, et cetera, even if you're not 16, 17, but feels that way, right? Of like, oh God, the bills are getting me, but I really know I need this, that they have some place to go. And, I have one final question for you, like to ask everyone that comes in the show. And that question is, let's say that someone listens to this episode and they're really excited to start highly optimizing their life starting tomorrow. What is the one piece of wisdom or invitation you could make to them to allow them to start highly optimizing their life starting tomorrow? What's the one thing that you would suggest?
Well, first, you don't have to wait till tomorrow. You could start right now. And, whatever it is that's got your attention, if you're listening to this, to me talk and Ryan here having a conversation, great. Put it down. Put it down, sit still, and turn your attention into your inner experience. Start making yourself a priority. You don't have to wait. You don't have to do it tomorrow or next year or whenever. You can do it right now. And keep making a choice to turn your attention back into yourself. All the wisdom's in there. All the knowledge is there. And then when you do start going out into the world looking for information and resources, you'll be more inclined, I think, to want to use those resources or to find the information and resources to help you further in this practice. So you don't got to wait. Just start doing it now. And it might look like just sitting here and realizing, wow, my mind is super busy, or wow, there's all this tension in my body. Just noticing it's the first step. Right. And then you can make choices of saying, oh, wow, the mind's taking me away from this feeling in my body. Can I pay attention to it? Can I listen to it? Can I relate and connect to it? You don't got to change it. You don't got to fix it. You don't got to get rid of it. Just start paying attention to it. And you can do that right now.
Dude, spoken like a true wizard, my man. Thank you so much for that, man. And thank you so much for an amazing battery charging conversation. And guys, please take advantage of what Julian is offering here. He is an extremely skilled practitioner who has spent years honing his craft, really allowing himself to connect with his clients. And as you just heard here, he does this on a little bit different of a level than you might find in the typical therapist out there. And again, this isn't anything to knock therapy. There's a lot of amazing people out there. But like he said, and like I said as well, there's also a lot of people that just didn't get trained properly because they didn't have the full awareness of what was really going on here. And so please, if you're feeling like, yeah, I need some support right now, go take advantage of what Julian said. Hop in some of his groups, book a consultation with him. You have everything to gain and nothing to lose. So guys, if you love the show, go give it a 5-star review. You know the deal. Helps us get the show out to more amazing people just like you. And until next time, everybody, I hope you're having the best day ever, wherever you are in the world. And until next time, may the source be with you to infinity and beyond. Peace, everybody.